Okay, hello and welcome to our fifth video around Christmas Exposed, and today we are talking about my favorite, if not top favorite, traditions around Christmas, and that is this guy. You call him many things. He's been called, in my life, he's been called everything from Kersvader, Sinterklaas, Santa Claus, Saint Nick, jolly old fat guy, um, just plain Nicholas, and the tradition that connects to that immediately is Christmas stockings. That one's upside down. Christmas stockings, inevitably, because they coincide. They're practically the same tradition, just two different ways of celebrating it. And now, as we put him into our Christmas display of the calendar and the Advent wreath and our bigger calendar up there, talking about Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas is a controversial thing. So much so that Christian fatigue around consumerism and around holidays like Christmas, Santa Claus has become the bad guy because consumerism has kind of adopted him, and during the course of history he's become a mythical creature of his own. But there was a Saint Nick, an original Nicholas, born in Patara, in what today we call Turkey. It was Lycia, but Turkey today, and modern day Turkey. And he was said to be a wealthy man who sold all of his belongings and everything he owned, and the money that he gathered, being a man of faith and later even becoming a bishop, he had spent his time traveling and doing good deeds, trying to stay anonymous as he'd gone around. Which brings us to the story of the three sisters. So I'm not going to go through all of the other, some horrifying, some cannibalistic, but some crazy stories and tales about his life and things that the poor man has come across. But Stockings has coincided with Saint Nick, because as the story goes, or as the tale goes, and as history tells us, Saint Nicholas visited one of his country towns on one of his traveling expeditions to help the poor and to be kind towards especially children. In those times it was not uncommon for parents to sell their children if they were impoverished, because they could not care for them, especially around women and girls. So there's a story of three sisters. So the three sisters grew up in a very poor household, and their father would have to sell them into slavery. Yes, you heard correctly. Today we will call it human trafficking. He would literally traffic his own children into slavery, most probably sex slavery, as it's not a new problem we face in our society. And Saint Nicholas came across them, but he knew the pride of people, so he would not let the father be faced with an issue of being too proud to accept this gift. So he would sneak into his house at an unsuspecting hour, leaving bags of money. And as the daughters grew up, with the third daughter, the third time Saint Nick came around, the father had caught him as he left the money and snuck out. And that's how the tradition started of giving to others. Why he gave him bags of money was for the dowry for his daughters, so that his daughters would have dowries, so that they could marry men, so that they did not have to become slaves because they could not care for themselves, as the tradition said. So later on, during the 1500s with the Reformation, as Saintism kind of took the back step, and a lot more within Reformed churches, Saint Nicholas, because of his kindness, especially towards children and especially towards those less fortunate, and probably around because his death and celebration of his life's work around 6 December is the reason why, especially in Holland at that time, Saint Nick did not disappear. By then he was called Sinterklaas. And as Hollanders immigrated throughout the world, when they came in New York, by the 1700s, or no, the 1800s, 70s. It has been reported where all the Hollanders around this time would celebrate December 6th as Saint Nicholas Day or Sinterklaasdag, and that would become a whole holiday. Fast forward to 1890, the Salvation Army would take this saint on as their patron saint by putting out literal Santa Clauses on the 6th of December. Fast forward another through to 300 years, not 300 years yet, but today Santa Claus is internationally known and a myth, but always to remind us to give to those who do not have. So, as the story was told, a lot of people said no, it wasn't bags of money, because Sinterklaas or Saint Nick knew them. He would tell them, he would put the money in their stockings, which they would inevitably hang in front of the chimney so that it could dry after washing them at night. As you know, Europe, winters, very, very cold. Asian Minor, very, very cold. Winter that time of year, so extremely cold, extremely impoverished. And they would fill these stockings in reminder of being kind to others. They would fulfill them with fruit, because in the dead of winter in that time, a fruit would be something very scarce and very sweet and very delicious, especially for poor people who did not have food. A fruit would be an especially sweet treat. And what would we fill them more? Small toys if they were children, and a bit of treats like cookies. These are Lebkuchen, and these will be filled in stockings that were put out. In some traditions, especially in Germany, where I came across this tradition and learned this part of history the first time, I got the dates wrong, as my host family in Germany celebrated it on the 8th of December. So what was really strange is by the 7th my shoes had disappeared, and on the 8th, when I opened my door, my room door, my shoes were filled. So children would be taught to polish their shoes and keep their shoes nice and shiny, because Saint Nick will come by, or the spirit of Saint Nick will come by. Santa Claus will come, and Santa Claus or Klaus would come and inspect, and if your shoes were shined and you were good during the year, you would receive a gift. Gifts of chocolates and fruits and nuts, all the things that are scarce in winter, but that help us get us through to this winter, to summer, which we live for in our lives. Hashtag, by the way, a side note. Coal and lumps of coal today has become a sign of punishment. But for a lot of impoverished and poor children, poor families that could not afford to stay warm during the winter, the original cause and promise of socks or stockings to fill them with coal would be the gift of warmth, because at the very least we could have warmth. So next year, or maybe this year on the 8th, as our family will still celebrate it on the wrong day this year because I had my dates mixed up. In future, instead of Xing Santa Claus out of our traditions, maybe you should consider your family spending time with your children and teaching them the story of Saint Nick, the origin of where Saint Nick's love came from, the love of caring and giving, because he felt so strongly that God's message of love and care should be given to all in this world and be open to all. And that we can celebrate together with stockings, and in South Africa with proudly South African things and proudly South African games, especially like these wooden puzzles which I have now broken, and will rebuild fruits, nuts which are in season in this time, but also caring and picking someone to care for that are less fortunate, and just surprising them without them knowing it is us, so that everyone would know Santa Claus might be a symbol of the season, but he was also a servant of God. Have a blessed one. May your week be peaceful.